Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Forbidden Places to Astral Project. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, you can certainly do so on Patreon. When you join, you get advanced podcasts on Sunday. You get a chat function where you can not only talk with me, but everybody else, and a direct mail function where you can ask me questions that you don't want to share with necessarily everyone else. If that sounds like something that you might look into, just go down to the description and you'll find a link to Patreon. Next up, private astral projection lessons. These seem to be going very well, and I've got a lot of folks signing up. If you'd like to get some more information, just go down to the description, and there's an email there. Just send me a request for more information. Okay, let's get started. Forbidden places to astral project. Now, these are all places that I have experienced myself, and I can tell you that in many cases, these are areas you probably don't want to find yourself in. And I'll get into why. First up is cemeteries. Old cemeteries, like, ones that haven't had new burials for like the last 100 years or so, aren't as bad. They're almost like echoes of sadness. But cemeteries that are recent and that are currently being used are full of sadness. I've found myself flying over a cemetery once, and I was doing just fine, and then I was just knocked out of the air like someone had shot me down. Because flying over the cemetery, I just hit this wave of sadness that was coming off of it, and it just lowered my vibratory status so much that I just crashed right into the cemetery. So that's not something you really want to be involved in. You want to have yourself a nice, pleasant projection. So do your best to avoid flying over cemeteries, or make sure that you're really high up. I think I was like a treetop level at the time for whatever reason. So that was too low. Next, power stations. They've got electromagnetic energy. These power stations, substations do. And if you are vibrating closer to the physical, you will find yourself being drawn to these places if you get too close. And I remember once I was just kind of stuck up against one of these substations. And this was early on in my experiences when I was just a kid. So I didn't really know that I could, consciously raise my vibratory status, or that I could, for instance, jump to a different time zone and get away. So I ended up waiting there until I was pulled back into my body. So, just avoid them. Any, high power lines, certainly power stations, substations, that kind of stuff. Try to avoid them as much as possible. Next up, old hospitals and mental asylums. These places, heck, they look spooky, usually. And, they've been abandoned usually for years. And unfortunately, there are still entities that are stuck in these places. And I've described some rescue attempts that I've made to those areas with, mixed results. Some people have asked, why don't, guides or angels or whatever come and get these people out? Well, I can't speak for angels, but I can tell you that my own efforts in trying to rescue or help these spirits, the reason it meets with mixed success is there are some who, because of reasons of fear, anger, hate, and I suspect sometimes even love in a weird way, a sick way, keeps these people in these places. And if they refuse to leave, you can't make them. So I imagine that's the same problem with, angels or guides. They still have free will. And if they want to hold out there for some period of time, you really have to let them. And all you can do is hope that eventually they'll just get tired of being in this place, and that all they have to do is just send out a clear signal for help. And believe me, aid will come. If not in the person of an astral projector, for instance, doing rescue work, certainly other helpful entities will come to help them. But, unless you're someone who's very experienced and is very interested in doing rescue work, it's best to avoid, old hospitals and mental asylums, because there are some truly deranged, especially in the mental asylums, deranged spirits that are still there. And they can't hurt you, but they certainly can give you a little bit of a scare, because some of them have really changed into awful, bizarre forms. And it's just not something you want to explore unless, like, as I said, you're experienced and you're really devoted to, to doing some sort of rescue work. Okay, other places. High humidity places like swamps, or damp, humid basements. There's a reason why whenever you watch one of these ghost programs, the people go into a house and invariably they end up going down to the basement and their little meters or whatever start jumping up and down. It's because, and swamps also have a reputation for being haunted. The reason is the high humidity in these places actually helps low vibrating spirits feel even more like being alive, like they felt when they were in their body. There's something about that high humidity that can aid them in feeling more, physical. And it's just, and also they can use that energy to manifest at times, to move objects, or just to manifest in a form that humans can see. So it's they're just once again places that unless you're there to do rescue work, you probably want to give them a wide berth. Next up, places where tragedy occurred. I remember about a year after 9/11 happened, I decided to go and visit the site. And, when I appeared there, I just was overwhelmed by, by this sadness. I just felt so heavy. And I could just sense there were still some poor spirits there who still were uncertain what the heck had happened. And they were sorrowful, they were confused. Uh, and I remember I called for help to try to help these people. And I hope that help arrived, because I could tell I wouldn't be able to stay there long. I just had a feeling. Once you projected it a lot, you start sensing how long you're going to be able to stay somewhere. And, it was very overpowering. I remember when I finally returned to my body, I think I pretty much spent a day just kind of curled up in bed, because it was so traumatic, going to that place of disaster and loss and death. So, they're really places that are best left alone. That's my advice. If you want to go and visit places of tragedy, I once thought about going to Jonestown, but I decided not to do that. If you decide you want to check it out, at least be aware of what you're going to run into so that you won't be surprised. Next, battlefields, places where many people died. I've been to Gettysburg, which was a famous U.S. Civil War battlefield, and Omaha Beach, which is, one of the beaches that the Allies landed on in World War II, against the Germans. Gettysburg, I recall it wasn't as bad as Omaha Beach, because the battle in Gettysburg took place in 1863, so it's been, quite a while. But I still could feel this low level of sadness and depression, of wasted opportunity, wasted lives, wasted potential. And it wasn't as bad as more recent type situations, but I even saw a couple soldiers standing, like still, like they were still on guard. And I approached one of them, and he didn't really see me. Either that, or he was doing a great job of ignoring me. So it was just, it wasn't a fun place to be. Let me put it to you that way. Omaha Beach, I checked that out once years ago, and of course the tragedy there is much more recent than Gettysburg was, and I felt the same kind of stuff that I felt at Gettysburg, only worse, because it was a lot stronger, and and there were still some soldiers there who just, I guess they just died so quickly that I guess they just didn't see it coming, and they just were having trouble coming to terms with it. These were young men, keep in mind. We're talking 18 to 21 years old, many of them, just beginning their lives, and to have it snuffed out so quickly and so violently. Even in a noble cause, it's still, not a very pleasant thing to have happen. And so the energies in that place definitely affected me, and I wished later on that I hadn't subjected myself to that. But since I did, I'm able to talk about it with you so that you can make your own decision in that, do I want to go and visit these places? And if you do, once again, at least you know what to expect. Lastly, I want to talk about places of execution. I've been to a couple of those, but the one that impressed me the most, in a weird way, of course, was Newgate, Newgate Prison in London. This was a place of executions for centuries in London, and the anger that was still there. It's weaker because of the time that has gone by, but I just sensed anger, a lot of anger, and also some sadness there as well. I remember I saw one, I guess, old prisoner that stared there and looked at me with hate, and he had this awful scar around his neck, I assume from hanging. And I tried to communicate with him, but he just projected hate. And as I recall, he just was very violent towards me, and called me all kinds of names, and it was just not a fun experience. But once again, it was something that I guess was worth experiencing, in that I can warn you that if you decide to visit these places, well, at least you know what you're headed for. Okay, these are some forbidden places to astral project, and word to the wise: if you're gonna go, at least know what you're getting yourself into. If you found that interesting, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't already, and your comments. Have you ever projected to any of these places, or heck, have you ever gone to these places in the physical, and how's it felt? I mean, I've never gone to Arlington Cemetery, for instance, in the astral, but I went there in the physical, and I tell you, the sadness that was just hit me so hard tells me that going there in the astral would be 10 times worse. But at any rate, let me know if you've ever experienced anything like this, or any questions that you would have about any of these things that I mentioned. This is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.